Today, I wanted to talk a little bit about um, the two roads which are available at any given moment. Call it the high road versus the low road, or the the common road, or the road less traveled. There's a really good book by that name, The Road Less Traveled, by a psychiatrist named Dr. Scott Peck. And one of the things um, one of the things I remember from this book is the definition of love that he uses is he calls it the work. The love is work. It doesn't happen automatically. It is love is the work of giving attention to somebody else. So the road less traveled, or uh, doing things in an honorable way, or a versus a dishonorable way, or um, you could say good versus bad behavior. And so this is about behavior that we have different choices, two different choices usually about our behavior. It's as simple as yes, no, or do it now versus do it later, procrastinating. And a lot of times it could be about quitting, that instead of doing something which it needs to get done, it is my responsibility or duty or obligation or commitment that needs to get done, but I don't do it. And so there are 1,000 ways of quitting. One way of quitting, of course, is suicide. But on that continuum, there is on that continuum, on the spectrum of 1,000 ways of quitting, there are other ways of quitting, which is many ways of doing self-harm, um, giving up hope, being discouraged, and so on. We can say also that at any given moment, uh, a man is acting either like a victim or like a hero. He has a choice. So as it has been said in psychology, that the the person who was victimized, those are the facts. The victimization happened, but now after that, some action needs to take place. Otherwise, a person can get stuck in that victimhood and become powerless and get controlled by that victimization. So, so it doesn't mean that the person is not a victim. The victimization happened, but now what to do about it? Now there's some action that needs to be taken, which also includes healing. Uh, so, in general, a person can either act heroically or like a victim. For example, being a victim of circumstances, that acting as if powerless, that the circumstances are much more powerful than the individual, and often that is the case, that these social forces are much more powerful. But still, a person can make a choice to act heroically to make the best of that given situation. So the next thing is a person can can choose to behave in a beneficial way or a harmful way, and also mindful way or a mindless way. So it could be that a person is going through life mindlessly on autopilot, and that is different from being mindful. So, being mindful means being cognizant of our actions, being purposeful. Being purposeful versus purposeless or aimless. So if a person is not being mindful, they're not paying attention, and paying attention is key. So Dr. Cornel West, in one of his lectures, he said that 2,500 years ago, Socrates said that an unexamined life is not worth living. And 2,500 years later, Malcolm X built upon that, and Malcolm X said, an examined life is painful. So an unexamined life is not worth living, and also an examined life is painful. So a person who is on autopilot, going about their day in a mindless manner or an aimless manner, they're not doing self-reflection. And although on the surface it may seem like they have shoved their problems under the rug, but it is painful. It is still painful, and to sweep the problems under the rug is painful, because those skeletons in the closet don't go away. And then later, when we do self-reflection and we do self-examination, it is painful, but that is what we can call clean pain. It's painful, but it's very rewarding if we are doing self-examination in order to correct ourselves. So that's another point, that a person can be arrogant and say that there's nothing wrong with them. Some people actually believe that they are perfect, and then they don't have to take any responsibility or do any soul searching, and they are pointing the finger at other people and blaming them. The opposite of blaming others is to point the finger at your own self and taking responsibility. So mindfulness versus mindlessness, purposeful versus aimless, being beneficial, that if my behavior is beneficial to someone versus it's harmful to someone, or am I trying to bring healing, or are my actions resulting in injury to others or wounding them? What I'm saying, words cast spells, and so casting spells also involves making potions. So are those poisonous potions, or are they medicine? So what I'm saying about other people, am I poisoning the environment and their friendships and their relationships, or I am providing some kind of medicine through my words and actions and my behavior? Next is in two options of behavior is me versus we. So I can be selfish and try to get whatever I can for me, myself, and I, or I can be selfless or be of service to others, instead of taking, try to be giving or being generous instead of selfish. And then another important point at the end is what is the truth? What are the facts versus excuses, lies, BS, justifications, fabrications? Or another way of saying it is, are we living in reality or in fantasy? Another aspect related to fantasy is, what are our expectations? So expectations, what they say is an expectation is an appointment with disappointment. An expectation is an appointment with disappointment. So are those realistic expectations that we have from others, or is it just a fantasy? Um, a person looking for a mate, are they looking for some kind of fantasy, like from Hollywood and Bollywood movies, or or are they looking for some kind of reality? So looking for fantasy and having those fantasy beliefs can be extremely painful. Yeah, so back to the previous, how that's connected is reality is about um, truth. What is the truth? What are the facts? The facts are the facts. And when the facts are the facts, sometimes we have to take ownership of our own mistakes. And that is the only way we are going to be able to correct ourselves and to improve ourselves. Otherwise, the other option is, the other choice is to make excuses, lies, BS, justifications, fabrications. Um, oh, I put this should be opposite. I put it in the wrong. Put it in the wrong column. Me is negative. Should be on the other column. It's so easy to be selfish. So, so a lot of times for our bad behavior, we have a lot of excuses. We can make up a lot of excuses for our bad behavior. Excuses, lies, BS, justifications, fabrications. And so that requires a reality check. And sometimes, we have blinders on and we might not be able to do that reality check without the help of somebody else. So having trusting relationships or trusting friends, trustworthy friends is important. And those friends can hold up the mirror and help us do a reflection, so that we can figure out which side of the column are we on. Yes or no? Do it now or do it later? Take care of your responsibilities or quit? Act heroically or like a victim? Be of benefit to others or be harmful? Heal instead of wound or injure others? Provide medicine or poison? Sometimes it's bitter medicine versus sweet poison. Um, be inclusive or aim for win-win, or look at how something would benefit a lot of people. So that's the concept of we, or being of service, versus me, being selfish. Being mindful versus being mindless, being purposeful versus being aimless, um, being look at the truth or the facts instead of making excuses, lies, BS, justifications, fabrications. Be based in reality instead of fantasy. So these are some of the ideas which can help us stay on track. So if I'm on one side of this column, then I can figure out that I am off track. And then I can uh, shift, change gears, and go to the other column, which will get me back on track. Sometimes we are on a tangent, and once we realize that we are on a tangent, then we can get ourselves back on track. Sometimes it's like being on a journey on a train or on a bus, and which is symbolic of being on track. So you're on a bus or on a train, you're on track, heading toward a destination. You get off at a bus stop on the way, and you get stuck there, you get busy there, you end up um, getting sucked in at that bus stop, and you forget where you were headed. You forget to get back on the bus. You forget to get back on the train, or you get involved in instant gratification that is happening there, and that's a short-term view, and you forget about the long-term vision or the higher purpose. So this was a little talk about we often have two choices, and um, this is how we can take control of our life. So either I'm running my life or somebody else is running my life. So if I'm not in control in certain parts of my life, those parts I will end up giving control to others. So, for example, uh, a person is out of control at work. Um, that gives the control of their life to the boss or the customer. The customer will leave. So now the customer controls that person, or the boss will fire them, and now the boss controls that person. So we can be in control or disciplined, in control of ourselves, I mean, or have self discipline, or the other option is to be out of control. And that reminds me of Robert Bly said there's three kinds of men: uh, the savage man who has no boundaries, but he thinks he's free, but he is a menace to society. Secondly, is a domesticated man. He is not free. He's being controlled by somebody else, like a pet dog or a pet cat. He has become domesticated. A wild man is in the middle. Wild doesn't mean crazy. Wild doesn't mean savage. It means free, like a wild animal in its natural environment in the wilderness. A wild animal which has not been tamed or domesticated. So a wild man is a man who has boundaries, plus he has certain amounts of freedom. Um, so so boundaries are important. And this list can also help us uh, stay stay within boundaries. Being disciplined is also about having boundaries. Healthy relationships have boundaries. When people cross each other's boundaries, that's called a um, codependent relationship. So, two choices at any given moment, and we can, if we are paying attention to our behavior and our attitude, we can shift gears and choose the heroic path, choose the higher ground, choose the road less traveled, choose the honorable way, do the right thing instead of trying to be right. Um, do the good deed instead of trying to look good. And with that, um, that's the end of today's little talk. Have a good one.